Okay, welcome to our legislative roundtable as the culmination of our Advocacy 101 class. I'm Merrill Gay, the director of the Early Childhood Alliance. We are joined today by Representative Tim Ackert and Representative Jill Berry. And they are going to share with us some insights about what it's like to be on the receiving end of advocacy, what works, what doesn't work, and the ways, some advice for you on how to build relationships with your legislators. So I want to kick this off with some questions for our legislators. And the first one is, what advice would you give a group of people who you've never met before if they're meeting with a legislator for the first time on how to do that well?
Hello, I am Jill Berry. I am the state representative for Glastonbury. And it's so nice to see so many people wanting to learn about this process. It's so important. I would say the first thing that you should do is find out who your legislators are and make contact with them and just introduce yourself, tell them who you are. A lot of legislators do hold office hours or coffee meet and greets or legislative forums. I go to those, talk to them. Don't ever get intimidated by someone if they're a different political party or anything like that. Always reach out to them. When I first was elected in 2019, I had several business owners reach out to me. And right off the bat, one of them said, "Hey, we might not agree because we're different political parties." I said, "Doesn't matter. Like, I want to hear who you are, what's important to you." And, and that started a relationship, and we agreed probably more times than not. And even if you're not talking about a specific issue, just developing that relationship is key. And I'll turn it over to you. And
yeah, that's a great start. Do anybody have so you have your residents, do you have a business or work at a business also in a community? Okay, so know those legislators and senators. So your Senate and your House both, okay? And if you, wherever that's, because also that they serve you also because you're paying taxes in that town. And not that you can vote for them there, but what you can do though is have that also that connection and that personal connection. Also reach out, find out who they are, and make sure you get on their emails so that you know what, that what they're sending out, what they're working on, because then you can respond to those and you can have that connection. But the person, with anything in life, the personal connection, you sitting there and meeting with them face to face. I'll have people say, "Tim, we're meeting at the coffee house on next Tuesday." I go, "Okay, what time are we meeting at the coffee house?" They'll literally tell you that way. That that's what they want to do. And here's my issues. And so that may not always take place, but for the most part, typically a state rep. So I didn't introduce myself, Merrill did, but so I serve the 8th district, which is Coventry, Columbia, Tallinn, Bolton, and Lebanon. So I have partial towns. So I'm out a little bit different. Just to also, I know that this is childhood. So we had an in-home daycare for almost a decade in my home. So I was the one that would ruffle up the feathers when I got home from work, and my wife would be like, "We just stop it. You're sending them home all riled up." I'm like, "Well, I got to play with them, So it was so I can have some passion for what that you're doing, but I think that's the key. Is once you know them, and what they're working on, you can look at your legislator up and what they're working on, and so the personal connection always goes as a great start. And if you do start to meet them in a group, this is a round table, 2, 3, 4, type of thing, just to get to, especially if you're in, like I said, I heard many people were in New Haven or some people in Norwalk. It's okay to meet with them in a small group effort so that you can all have input, because a lot of it, especially when we get into session, as Merrill knows, it's hectic. If you're nearby, you can get up here, but usually try to meet them again, if they have any open events or meet them individually, or at your business, have them invite them in. We love visiting, by the way, so we do love to go and sit down with you and say, here, and you sit down and take them and say, "Here's what I do. and here's some of the issues I'm working on, and you have that impactful, sit down with them in your own place of business. That helps out also.
Legislators rarely turn down a visit to a child care center. Um, So, thinking about a time when a group came to you with an issue you didn't know much about, can you remember like what about that interaction with them helped to persuade you that, hey, this is something I should be working on? Yeah.
So I've been in the building here since 2011. So I've been doing it for quite a while. And one of the things that I try to do is get on different committees. So I'm not always on the same committees every 3 years and just, I want to learn. So I got on human services and dealing with what they have as a waiver process. So when you're on human services and you need to get into services, need to get into a facility for a person with, disabilities, and they have this waiting list and I never knew anything about it. But once we did learn about it and learn more about it, that the action that took place to help these people with disabilities to get into a facility and care that they needed, that their parents could no longer help them with because they were either aging. And so you sit there and say, how do we get this waiting list of 150 to 200 individuals that don't have care, that proper care? So that was something that really hit home when we sat there and met with them and Lily went to a facility that would help them, but said, yes, we would love to, but look at look how packed we are. So that was one that when I was on human services, that really made a strong impact in me. And then we were able to work on that. It took a while to keep getting it because of funding, but it started to work in the right direction. So.
And I'll just expand a little bit on that. So it's very important to meet your legislator, but it's also important to know who the legislators are on the committees that are of concern to you. So if you're in early childhood, the education committee, and going and talking to them and testifying in front of them is a huge impact, and hearing directly from providers and people in the field and people that legislation affects is so key. So it's important to let your legislators know how you feel about things, but it's also very important to talk to the committee of cognizance. And I did have an issue a couple years ago when I got up here in 2019. I had a neighborhood that had reached out to me, and they lived in the vicinity of a gun range. The Elks Club had a gun range, and they were shooting at all hours of the day. And this neighborhood was upset, and they wanted to find out how to limit their hours. And they went to the town, and the town said, "We have no reason, we can't do that. It's a state issue." So they came to me, and I really knew nothing about it. And I utilized the Office of Legal Research, who did some research for us. As legislators, we have access to nonpartisan offices that help us, either whether it's fiscal or legal, that can give you an opinion on an issue. So they came back to me and they gave me some ideas of how to help it. And actually, I wasn't able to fix it legislatively, but knowing these people, meeting them several times, talking to them several times, I organized a meeting with our town manager, and the town was able to respond. And it's not completely, and they're not really happy completely, but we were able to go around legislation. So not everything happens in this building, but we can help you coordinate with the town or other people that may be able to help you.
I forgot to, let me repeat that question because I didn't say. Can you think of a time when someone's personal story moved you to action? What was it about that story that made it compelling?
So this is actually a pretty emotional story, but this is one I do like to tell where advocacy does work. When 2019, when I was elected, we were talking about aid in dying. And that's something that, I mean, quite honestly, I said, I really don't even want to think about that. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know. And we weren't voting on it. I had a resident that wrote to me and several times, and she's like, I want to know how you feel about this. And I kind of gave her the canned political answer. I don't really know. It's not going to come up. I'm not going to vote on this year. So she kind of accepted it. 2020, she came back. I'm like, oh, COVID, we're not talking about it. No votes. So 2021, after the session, she reached out to me and she said, I want to meet, I want to talk to you. Let's get together. And I was kind of hesitant because I really didn't want to discuss this issue. And so I agreed to, and we went and we met on a farm, and her and I sat there for several hours. I sobbed the entire time. She told me her whole story about how she had terminal cancer, and we just had this conversation and we talked about a lot of things. And the conversation actually wasn't about death, it was about living. And she at the end said, You are my representative and I want you to support this bill. And I said, I will support it after listening to you. And then she reached out to me a couple months later and she said, I'm not going to be alive when you have to vote on this bill. I have terminal cancer and I am going to die before you vote on this bill. Will you give me your word that you will? And I said, I will. And that it was incredibly, incredibly moving.
I was gonna say, right?
You can't, like, you can't.
I want to go first.
It worked.
Maybe a little bit more lighthearted. Same concern though is that we had, this thing called PJ Day. I don't know if you've heard of PJ Day, where the kids wear pajamas to their school and they donate. So it's at every school, not at every school, it's every school district. Well, the young man in my district started that day. His sister was at Connecticut Children's Hospital, and he always saw the kids in pajamas because they're in the hospital, right? And so he said, let's have PJ Day, and started it in our little local school. I don't know, 2007 now. Now it's in all 169 towns and in many schools, and out there raises millions and millions of dollars for the Connecticut Children's Medical Center, Children's Medical Center now. I don't think it's called Connecticut anymore. But it was the advocacy of him coming in, him testifying here and listening, and everybody saying, we want to support this. We want to make it a day. So it actually has its own day now, the second Friday in December. But it was more of that advocacy that met with them. And it's about, these young children with cancer and their battle, and how he wanted to do something for all of them. And it was a more of a lighthearted, piece of legislation. But also sometimes our work doesn't have anything to do with legislation. Recently, I had a family that was separated because of just some bureaucracy in Connecticut, in one of the departments. And I reached out to our government relations person and worked diligently with them because this young man was going to be taken away. And he was a teenager, and he was put with a foster care, and nobody could find a reason why this was going to take place. I got involved, my office got involved. We reached out. We wanted to make sure that every email that went back and forth from the State Department and I also got copied on it. So as of 3 weeks ago, they were reunited with their family, and they're whole again. So sometimes you don't do any legislation. It's just about your advocacy and getting something to happen in the department. And sometimes things that you're concerned would do the same thing. So.
Yeah, so it wasn't really on my question list, but it prompts the question of could you talk a little bit about constituent services and what kinds of things you help your constituents with?
And as Jill started, it doesn't maybe all deal with just, state stuff. Sometimes we, just get involved, just being included in an email, which is sad to say, that just being CC'd on an email. Oh, the legislator's also looking at this. Oh, okay. All right. And it works. By the way, that works. That's just so your own, that, you working with a department or in something, or you CC your, typically, if they're an involved and engaged legislator, which the majority of them are, that makes an impact. Because I'll reach back, go, hey, just making sure how this is going, and they'll be like, oh, Tim's actually reading these, or so. But that's a lot of, because we spend, we call it a part-time job. It's every day, 365 days a year. There is a constituent issue every day that comes up that you're either, that pops up that day, or you're continuing to get feedback. I've got 2 that I'm working on today. And we also have jobs, it's like, paying jobs. But so I think that some of those things that the little things that you would not know that a legislator can make an impact in, DMV, Department of Labor, so many. How many cases did we work on Department of Labor with unemployment compensation during COVID? Hundreds and hundreds individually, each legislator, helping them through the process. So DOT, roadwork, signs, light fixtures out on with Eversource, that they've contacted Eversource and they didn't fix their light fixtures. And we make an email to, hey, can you get those light fixtures on the street fixed? It's a dark area. So you name it. There's so much that goes on when there's obviously an emergency that goes on that that may take place, like in Berlin now, the fires. I'm sure those legislators are actively involved with those fires right now. Power outages, a lot of power outages, things like that. We're really actively engaged with all of those with the emergency preparedness groups. It ranges to anything you can. Sometimes it's federal stuff, and we turn it over to our Congress folks, or so we can't work on because it's there, but we stay engaged. So to be honest with you, the most important part of our job is constituent services. To me, that is, because that happens every day. We're passing laws in a short session and a long session, just certain months of the year. So the continued advocacy for our constituents is a day-to-day job.
I don't have much to add, except sometimes we do it even at the town level. So sometimes someone will reach out to me and I will reach out to someone at the town and help them. I've helped businesses, I've helped individuals. Actually, this morning I had a high school senior reach out to me, and she's applying to West Point, and she needed a recommendation from a congressman. So I contacted Congressman Joe Courtney and talked to his office and said, can you help my constituent, who's also, a constituent of the congressman as well? And, they told me what to do, and I called her and I said, this is what you do. And I made her day. It was the easiest, and it was simple. It was one simple phone call. So yeah.
There are frequently times when you're trying to figure out, who do I even call? Where, it feels like an opaque agency you're dealing with. That's where your legislator can help. Wanted to ask you both, when you think about the various ways that advocacy groups have tried to persuade you of things, are there some things that really turned you off that these folks shouldn't repeat?
Form emails. So if advocacy group sends us, you've probably seen them in some way, a mail or email, and you can see that the letter is one font and that the name is a different font, right? And it's everything. So we'll get 200 exactly the same worded email signed by somebody. All it is somebody using your name for their special interest. That doesn't work. If I got a personal phone call from 2 or 3 people, that's all it takes. One is enough. Typically, one is enough. But you get 2 or 3, that's like 300. It really is. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a real issue, And so that really matters. But you know, what we have the wine, people want to have wine in grocery stores. Well, the wineries want to have wine in grocery stores.
And the
Grocery stores want the wine. Somebody wants wine in grocery store. And I must have got, I don't know how many you got, 300, 400, 500. It just was incessant of over. And I'm like, I will not allow wine in grocery store just because of that, you know? So, but that doesn't work. That does not work. And the other thing that is, you know, sometimes unreasonable expectations. You know, let me give you an example of just a quick bill that you would think, oh my gosh, this should have passed. So I was one that championed raising the age of cigarette purchases to 21. And I fought and fought and fought, and you cannot believe, because there's a lot of lobbyists on the other side that want to sell 18-year-olds everything, right? It took 6 years to pass what you would have thought. Well, the military, you could join the military at 18 and you should be able to smoke. I was in the military. I didn't need to smoke in the military either, you know? So yeah, if you want to serve your country, great, but that's got nothing to do with health for a young person. So we were able to, get that passed, and also recently over the cups, same thing with e-cigs, to raise them to a purchase age of 21. So, but you know, so those kinds of things that you can work on, it takes time. So say, oh, we have to get it this session. Well, you know, it took 6 years to raise the age of cigarettes. So it takes time. So unreal expectations, and then, you know, the personal contact goes a lot further than, you know, a form email.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes when we get those form emails, we get hundreds of them and they're not from our district. So that they're automatically like thrown out. And, you know, if they're, and I will say sometimes if you do get a bunch of form emails and they are from your district, I mean, sometimes they do have a little bit of clout, but there's nothing better than a personal email. Just, hey, I'm so and so, I live in your district, and this is my issue. This is what I support. A lot of times you'll be looking to us to support things, but sometimes you'll be looking to us to, or asking us to oppose things. And that's equal for advocacy. I mean, sometimes you support things, sometimes you don't. Um, and I will say the other thing that I don't like is when I get, or when someone says to me or sends me an email and says, well, I voted for you and I won't vote for you again if you do this. And it's like, okay, well, like, let's have a conversation, or like, let's talk about it, and like, let me explain the bill to you, or you explain to me why I should or shouldn't. Just, I will never vote for you again if you do this. Like, okay. So I've gotten that.
What kinds? Go ahead. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I'm good.
No?
Nope.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to throw this open for people to ask questions. Yes.
Hi, thank you for explaining all of that. And you were saying how important it was that we reach out and contact our representatives and senators, which is great. And you also said it's important to reach out and contact those on committees that have interest. How do you handle non-constituents approaching your office because you're on a committee?
That actually happens a lot. So typically, when people come and testify, they're from out the whole state, and matter of fact, they're anywhere in the world. Now with Zoom, we have people weighing in on energy issues that are in Europe. You know, so the Zoom factor, if you can't make it here, especially if you're tied up, and you know the Zoom factor. If I believe we're gonna have it again for committees. I haven't heard that yet. The rules haven't been changed. Matter of fact, we're not even in office next year unless we get voted in next 2 weeks from now. But the issue that is, you know, when it's a committee issue, then that's wherever you're from doesn't matter. You know, like that constituent issue. You know, so like when you're testifying on an issue, or you're reaching out to a committee, that's a committee bill typically that you'll be working on. So they want to hear from anybody because it's a state law. not a district law.
But I'm not reaching out to the committee. I'm reaching out to you as a member of the committee to introduce myself and let you know that this is an area of interest. Are you saying that we should not reach out to the individual members?
No, I would suggest, yes, that you should, yes.
And then how do we approach the fact that I'm contacting you and you're Bolton and I'm Berlin?
Mhm.
And I'm saying, gee, I'd really like to talk with you. And I have hit roadblocks of you're not a constituent.
But is there a piece of legislation you're talking to them about?
Usually.
Okay, then you would hope that that would be open. Typically, if it's in a committee process, in a public hearing, then that's kind of where you would want to direct that type of input. Because it's going to reach all the committee members together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say that you have an individual advocacy company. So the alliance here, right? So you're going to contact the members and introduce yourself as these are the things that are important to us.
That happens often. Usually the meetings happen. So you would set up an appointment with their legislative aide to meet with them in their office if it's the alliance, if it's a meeting on behalf of a group. Yes, that is fine. We do that all the time. Yeah, I was the education ranking member and we met a lot of people. Every time I got a ranking member, it was typically the first time I was on the committee. So I didn't even know the committee, but they go, Tim, we need you there. Like, all right. And then here's all the meetings you're going to have, been meeting with all the groups that are impactful. Oh yeah, we meet on a regular basis. We'll meet with two or three groups a day when we're here in the building and working on committee stuff. That happens all the time. Please do that. Reach out to the committee members.
And I think, so if you reached out to your legislator, if you had an issue and you reached out now or in December and January, and you had an issue that you wanted the legislature to address, you can reach out to your individual legislator, explain it to them, and they can propose a bill on your behalf, if it's legislative. After that bill is proposed, it goes to the committee. So your legislator will kind of lose control if they're not on that committee. So that's where you would go and talk to the committee, testify in front of the committee. And then once that bill comes out of committee, you go back to your legislator and say, please support that bill, because you only have a vote on the committees that you're on.
And frequently, you'll be at a public hearing and you'll see a legislator ask a question and the person who's testifying maybe doesn't answer it quite to you could tell that the legislator's like, I wanted something more and I didn't get it. That's a good opportunity to be able to go up and say, Representative, I saw you had a question about that. Can I, give you some more information? And introduce yourself and how you're connected to the issue. So just a sample issue, a bunch of childcare providers have told me that they have recently had their liability insurance canceled or it's gone up dramatically in price. Now that the electronic inspection reports are available for insurance companies' AI systems to go search, and insurance company AI systems can't really tell the difference between the severity of some rust on the top of the swing set versus being out of ratio. They are simply saying, there are violations here, and it sort of triggers a thing, and that's prompting insurance cancellations. That's something we're going to need to explain to legislators. We're trying to quantify that now in a survey, but those sorts of questions that are fairly technical are going to take, somebody will need to introduce a bill, there'll need to be a public hearing, all of those sorts of things to try and figure out and it may be the answer isn't legislation. Maybe it's the chair of the insurance committee calling some insurance people in to say, hey, this is a problem. How do we fix it? So I took over, but other questions from other people? Think about, you're going to come up here to talk to legislators. What do you want to know?
We lost our insurance.
I'm vice chair of the insurance committee, so we can talk.
And that's the beauty of knowing who your legislators are that you're advocating to. It's as easy as that. Perfect example.
And I'll also say, if you do come up and testify, letting your legislator know that you are testifying on a bill and giving them a copy of your, sending them a copy of your testimony is also important, because if I find out that someone from Glastonbury is in the building, I might make a point to go talk to them, or, at least I know that, it sparks something that, how you feel about something.
And what I've done often is sat with my constituent when they're testifying, to be with them. And then it's sometimes you get it 3 minutes to present your testimony, but when questions come back and off, the timer's off at that point, so that you can have that, if the dialogue comes up. And so, sometimes your legislator may sit with you at times. I've done it a number of times when I'm in the building. And legislators are on two, what they call A committees and B committees. So they're typically, if you're on A committee, you're here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So typically they're not here the other days. And if you're B committee, you're Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you come up here and you go, where's my legislator? I can't believe they're not here. Depends on the committee dates that they're up here on. So.
In that regard, how do we find out like those schedules, or how do people find out which days? Is that online?
Yes, once your legislator gets their committee assignments, you can see what committees that they're on. And they'll tell the committee dates, or you look up cga.ct.gov. And you can go there and just find your legislator. You just click on find your legislator, and there you put your address in, and it tells you who your senator and your legislator are. And then you'll see typically their voting. You can find their voting record on what that they've been worked on, what bills that they've actually presented. It's all there for you. Yeah, we have a wide open. There's not too much we can hide in this world. So we're open books. So now, can I ask who childcare providers all? Okay.
I think about half the group. Let's higher hands. Who are the childcare providers in the room? Okay. Who are the folks who work with families but don't directly provide childcare? So family resource center types. Yeah. How about parents who are here with kids? All right, we have some of those too. All right. Well, when I said parents, I really meant parents of little kids, but some of us had little kids a long time ago. Yeah. All right. They're always little, right?
I have a quick question, because you were mentioning that sometimes you like to go to different committees and not stay on the same one for 3 years. So with the new elections coming up, what's the turnaround time where the committees will be set that legislators will be on, so then we know what's the window to start to look for the new legislative session?
When does your caucus do theirs?
Probably
We're in different caucuses, so you have a bipartisan group here.
I would say probably by December. We go into session January 8th. So that's when things will start. I think we'll be able to start proposing bills probably the middle of December or so. So probably by that point, everybody will have their assignments.
Okay, then I was looking at both are involved in a lot of extensive bills. Like, if you're reelected, do you have certain bills that you really are hoping will be your focus or the forefront? Like, how do you prioritize which ones? Is it based on constituency? Is it based on your party leaders? How do you balance it out as to what you're focusing most of your time on?
So each of us, so the only way to get a bill introduced is through your legislator. So if you want to have something introduced, do it through your legislator. So people reach out to me on different bills. So I keep a file after the end of last session or stuff that I've worked on for the last many number of years and want to keep moving it. Mine is workforce development, but my main focus, and I got a great colleague here with Joe. We were at a meeting last night. Meeting a week ago, and it's all about, listen, at what sector does it need workers right now, right? And so how do we get the youth involved in the workforce and getting moving. So that's kind of been one of the forefronts. Also areas that we can, kind of reduce the cost for Connecticut residents. There's a number of areas that I'm working on in that.
And I'm working workforce development. I'm also working on roadway safety. I am on the public safety committee. I am, like I said, vice chair of the insurance committee. We're looking at different affordable healthcare options. We've been trying to get a bill passed for a couple years, so we'll continue to do that. And then, anything constituent wise that comes up. I also do a lot of work with the town. So if the town has any issues that they want to bring up, I'll bring that up.
Another area that, which, you had a champion here with Merrill, by the way, and Care for Kids was always a passion for me, and expanding the Care for Kids program and Care for Kids funding and expanding it on to those getting educated. That was an area that we really focused on, making sure that, if you can't improve in many cases, your opportunities for work if you can't get educated, but then you have a child to watch, and it's just like the circle didn't end, and let's find a way to fix that. So that, and any of those areas that, we make sure that we can expand the opportunity for those that, need childcare, but also want to improve their education or get a better job, whatever that may be. So that's an area that I've, been happy to champion for quite a while.
And the Alliance and other associations do play a big role in promoting their priorities. So I will get behind some of those, probably on the committees that I'm on. But so that plays a huge role too. So and they have a lot of clout up here.
Thank you.
Sorry, I did have a question, but I wasn't sure I wanted to ask it. I work for All Our Kin, and we support a number of home-based childcare providers, some of whom are bilingual, some of whom only speak Spanish. And so I think there's a general question that if our educators were able to participate today would ask, which is how can folks who are non-English speakers ensure that their voice is equally heard? And more specifically, like if someone sends an email to you that's not in English, does that get translated? Who can folks contact about for support for public hearings and ensuring that there's interpretation, things like that?
So there is interpreters that are allowed that come here. I'm on the labor committee over the last couple of years, and so many of the individuals will come up that testify that are Spanish speaking only. So they have an interpreter that usually is worked with their group, and also that you can ask to have an interpreter. Yeah, we want to make sure that no matter who it is, we want to hear from them. If they write it, that would, might be a little bit more tougher to get translation in an email. But I think it's important that they submit it and try to maybe get on and testify.
In that, just following that line in the Spanish speaking. So if like they want to reach out and they can email in their own language, let's say Creole, Ukrainian, so it's like more comfortable and then it's easier for you to get that translator if it's email or mail.
I can't answer that question specifically because I don't, but I don't know how we get them, and they must figure it out. I don't know who actually figures that out, but we can check on that.
I would suggest if you're sending an email, if you're working with folks who don't speak English, who are writing in their own language, that they think about just running it through Google Translate. And it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than a legislator going, I don't know which language this is in.
Just so everyone knows, I've spoken to the interpreters for this course, and they say that the website DeepL is a lot better than Google Translate. So DEEPL.com, I think. Just a tip. Absolutely, D as in dog, EEP as in Paul, L.com.
We have time for one or two more questions if anybody's got something that you. Yeah.
Quiero agradecerles voy a hablar en español. Quiero agradecerles por tomar en cuenta a la comunidad inmigrante latina que ha crecido mucho en estos últimos años y me siento muy feliz de que nos tomen en cuenta en este país y muchas gracias por tomarnos en cuenta y escuchar nuestra voz de inmigrantes.
I'm not sure if there's a way we can get the translators on Zoom to be able to.
I can try in English.
No,
Oh, you-
we do have translators that should be able to pop on. I think Laura just unmuted.
Go ahead.
Laura, if you can hear me, we cannot hear you if you're talking.
Okay.
Sure, yeah,
What-
please, thank you.
No, that's okay. So I just don't remember like line by line, but I could just like
Oh,
summarize.
I
what
can
you
try
said.
in English. I said thank you so much for give us a voice and listen to people who speak Spanish and immigrant because we are a big majority. I
Mhm.
can
And we've
big
been growing.
majority and we have like a community Latino community a lot of struggles and the most people they don't talk. I included me like we have fear
Mhm.
to have a voice and thank you so much for give us this opportunity.
Mhm. Oh, you did a good job.
Okay.
That was fantastic. This is the people's house. This house is your house. We used to didn't have locked doors. We didn't. And they decided to put locks and things like that. This place was wide open when I started here. And you came in and went as you wanted to. And I would love to see that to be the way it is, but in society, they decided to do that. But when this place is open, this is your place. And so this is your legislators' offices. Again, they're not always here, but you can schedule it. That's the idea. That chamber over there, there's seating and viewing areas that if you got up above there and you can go there. It, to me, I am honored to be able to be in this building and work in this building and be in that chamber and pass laws that people passed centuries and centuries ago. So to be able to come here and you should take the honor of being here and being engaged and involved because less and less people are. And then they realize a bill got passed that negatively affects them and they go, how on earth am I going to make my way now that they did this to me? And it happens a lot of times in our businesses. And so next thing you know, yeah, that's a great, I'm so happy they did that, but now I can't afford it. You know, how am I going to pay my staff? How am I going to do this? And we do that over and over. And as a business owner also, I fight, for the business owners out there and say, listen, you don't know, a new insurance mandate comes out and it jacks the rates up to a point that, okay, I got to reduce my coverage or I got to do this. And you go, I granted, I wish we could do that, provide that insurance, but every time we do a new insurance mandate, the cost of running business goes up exponentially. And so your voice is important to be involved with this and being engaged, and especially for those that are, for the little ones out there, that we want to make sure they get the best care. So.
My name is Tashiana O'Connor, and I'm also a migrant immigrant as she speak. What I could speak from us, I'm being from Jamaica, and my husband is with Haitian. What we do, we intend to fear. It's fear of the unknown. Fear that if we talk, is our voice is gonna be shut because we wasn't born into this country, right? And then we work so hard to blend in with you guys, to be a part of you guys. And then when laws are passed to affect our bill, affect our businesses, what we intend to do, we intend to just shut down and go with whatever it is. And I think that's what she's trying to come across to say, thank you for giving us the voice for immigrant, whether we're Spanish, Jamaican, Haitian, African, whatever it is, whatever nationality, Italian, wherever we're from. It's fair across all the community that's the one that's not born into this country. We don't know. We don't know if we come out, talk to you guys, if you're going to listen, right? I know you come and say, yeah, you may listen, but especially if someone is undocumented and working on a TIN number, then they fear that they don't want to go back home. They don't want to be deported. So what should I do? You know, can I say something? You know, if I come here and tell you that, listen, I'm working on a TIN number, they fear of someone coming in the morning, knocking on their door and say, you got to go back home. We came here for a reason. We came here for better. And we see the opportunity in us immigrant, we grabbed it. We take it. We don't make excuses, and we're not asking for handout. What us immigrants are asking for is a fair shot, and we want to say thank you for all that you have done and everyone that have done it. Right? Thank you, guys. That's what she's trying to say.
I want her up testifying, right? I want her up here. I want her up here testifying. Said because that's. I mean, this is our country, right? So this is our country. When you're here, it should be our country, and your voices all make an impact when you're going to speak. And I understand. I don't understand. I shouldn't say I know you're. But being on the labor committee, I can tell you how many people would not want to come up and testify because of the same exact reasons that we would have had them come up, but they're afraid that they're going to be pulled out of their homes. And that's the fact. And those are the ones that are being violated in labor, that they literally working, you know, and concerned and unfortunately there are not good business owners that take advantage of them and make them work extra hours with no overtime. We have laws that protect them, but if they're not able to get their voice out, as you mentioned, that, you know, they're more concerned. I just want to stay here. I don't want to make any waves, but we want to make sure that you're treated just like everybody else in the state. So, and this country. So thank you for that. Write her name down so I make sure she's on the public hearing list.
So, anybody? Yes, Steve. Sure, absolutely. Come up to the mic.
I just retired from state service after 32 years. And I have a question for everybody here. It's going to happen. As legislators, how would you recommend advocacy when legislation is passed but a state agency refuses to do what was required by you as legislators? It's a tough question, and I won't say anymore. But it's a toughie, and I don't know what you would recommend.
Yeah, so there's 3 branches of government. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to do the other branches work. We put, and there's no disrespect to our job, we put words in books. That's what we do. It's called state statutes. That's what we do. We advocate for that. But if a judicial system doesn't do their job, Tim, how come you can't stop speeding on Route 84? It's not my job. That's the judicial branch's job. You know, the police departments, that's part of the judicial branch. Tim, why can't you make a state department enact the law that you did? That's the executive branch's job. That's under the governor. So there's another avenue to advocate for there. So our job is, yes, to hold their feet to the fire, but it typically comes from the governor's job. The governor is the executive branch officer. We put the legislation together. We pass the bills. We don't execute the legislation, though. So,
but from an advocacy point of view, there are things that can be done to a state agency if they actually don't follow the American rule of law.
Yeah, but we can't. But there is no penalty from the legislature to that branch.
But if you were my state rep, what would you say to me?
I'd contact the governor's office. Oh, no. If you reached out to me and said, so on that end, no, then we have the community. Yeah, you'd reach out to us and say, hey, there's this law but the department's not doing anything about it, then our job would be to reach out on your behalf to the governor's office
For sure.
or that department commissioner. Yeah, I've got almost every commissioner on speed dial. So we can contact them if need be.
Struggle is real on this topic.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. Sure. Yep. Yep.
And a lot of times that's exactly how we know what's going on in the agencies is we get those emails or those phone calls from our constituents and we see where the deficiencies are. And sometimes it's really frustrating that it takes me to send an email to DOL, to Department of Labor, to get a response that my constituent has been trying to get for months. And I send an email and I get an answer. So that's how we see where the deficiencies are, is from hearing from you. But you're right. There's
And I wouldn't be saying this unless I had retired 2 weeks ago.
Well, thank you for your service to the state, by the way. And I wish to retire someday.
Are there any more questions?
On that same subject, there's he was talking about a statute that's been put in place and the department is not taking it up, and you could help. If there's a task force that's been appointed by the she's laughing already, that's been appointed by the governor or signed in by the governor, and it sits there dormant for years because the people that have to assign the people to sit on the task force don't do anything. What
I had a task force that I got passed and nobody ever got appointed.
right?
And you just go, it's law. Yeah. But what, there is no penalty to the agency. You know, you can't like penalize a state agency. You know, it's like, oh, you didn't do your job. We're going to fine you. Like, who's going to fine you? You know, what's the, but the advocacy is that we continue to push and when it comes to a public hearing, we may bring up that, hey, how come this task force never got, filled, or how much, or this? Well, nobody, we never appointed anybody. Well, but the goal of the task force is to actually get completed and fulfilled. But we had one that was run by dealing with crumbling foundations. We had one that was headed by a private sector individual business owner, and that was the only one that I know of that really got it done in a short amount of time and got the results and got the legislation. And the legislation got passed the next session. So sometimes those task forces just don't get filled, and then they don't meet.
But if that happens, I would suggest finding a few champions on your cause, and they can start their own task force. And I mean, they'll call it a roundtable, or they'll call it something. That's what we're doing. And you just get a bunch of people together, and you can have legislators, and you pick the people around the table, and you have a conversation like this and talk about issues, and then the legislators can propose legislation or work on your behalf. And sometimes that's a lot of times, if a bill isn't going to go anywhere or it needs a little more work, they'll assign a task force, and it's just a thing to do to appease.
Yeah, appease. They say
Appease.
they will, but then there's some political capital out there somewhere that's actually working against you with getting that thing done.
It definitely could, but I mean, like I said, if you find a few champions, you can at least work your cause and kind of get.
We did that in the case I'm thinking of. We did that, and then, oh yeah, that November 5th thing happened, and our champions were not voted back in, right? So there's always there's more avenues to kill a bill, like we all know, than there is to get one passed.
Thing to keep in mind when you are advocating for for a cause or legislation, know who opposes it. Because I'm going to ask you, by the way, as one of the parts, because if you're advocating, you're out there doing something, and you're going to say, well, who's going to be the opposition that is going to be reaching out to me also. So, it's better to know that so you can be on the defense if need be on that side of it. Typically in your area, there's not a lot of people that are opposing it, it may be like, yeah, well, that's going to require, $300 million to get it done. Okay, well, that might be, might be the issue, so, but know where where the drawbacks are going to be so that you're prepared if that gets asked, here's what you want to do. Okay. And it's great. Is there going to be any opposition to this, and kind of know what that is going in?
Uh, I didn't introduce myself. I'm a family child care provider, so I'm here, right? And speaking on the behalf of that. And again, I have a question because in the family child care services, we have a challenge now that, dilemma, we should say, where we're trying to get 401k and health insurance, right? The family child care, we're overworked and underpaid, right? And we have no health insurance. I have providers that's call me that makes too much money that they no longer qualify for Husky. What we're asking for is there a bill or something that could put in place that we could get a group, like we're not saying we're employees of yours, but what we're saying, put something in place to protect family child care. Because if we're not healthy, it's no way we could take care of those children, right? And we going out paying $600, $700, $800 a month for those health insurance, and we're not even collecting the family fee, and we're already working less than minimum wage when we have these kids. So is there a bill that could put in place, and how can family child care provider have their voice to be heard where we know that this bill is going? Because we talk, we rally, we do everything, and I'm thankful for Merrill and his team that really advocates on our behalf. But what can we do when what can we do?
How long have we been working on this, Jill?
Yes, we've been working on a bill that would do just that. It would allow small businesses of like businesses. So you would be able to group together and get insurance. You'd pool together and get insurance under, like, say, the Alliance. So all the childhood uh, care centers would pool together. So instead of, this group with 5 providers and this group with 2 and this group with 10, you would all be under one group. And we have been trying to pass that bill for several years, and we keep meeting a lot of opposition. But it will come up again this year, and I urge you to come up and testify. And last year we did have some early child care providers come in and testify. We had a bunch of nonprofits come in, a bunch of small businesses, and basically you would be able to group together under a professional association.
Yeah, it's called Association
Association health plans.
Health Plans. And yeah, it's all the building trades are fighting for it. All these groups are fighting for it because we're in the same boat.
Yep,
We're all
and,
small businesses, and I just got notified that my small businesses does not qualify next year for healthcare insurance. Yep. So I got to go find another healthcare provider for when my employees earn healthcare through my business. So they work hard, and I provide that, and I cover that. And I just got a letter saying next year you no longer qualify for our healthcare plan. It's and dropping out of the providers.
So we have a question from the chat. Donna Osich, who is with the Bristol School Readiness Council, I believe. Sorry, I just looked at it and now I forgot. Sorry, Donna. Donna asks, what if the opposition is the commissioner because the governor opposes the legislation for some reason? So we're going back to Steve's topic from before, and I'm not sure how much you want to elaborate on that, but that is the question.
I need that repeated. I didn't hear that. I heard it, but it sounded like if the governor doesn't like it, what is the?
Well, so commissioners work for governors. When the governor says no, commissioner has to toe the line. And so the question is, if you're somebody who feels, impacted by that decision, and you're trying to change something, or what's the best way to approach things when the commissioner?
That's a tough road. If the governor is going to veto a bill that may, so, and it's true, the governor, so the commissioners work for the governor. So there is times that, and this happens over and over, as long as I've been here, the commissioners would love to support legislation. But if it's not in the governor's budget, it's the governor's budget and they work for the governor. It's like any staff member for any business, right? So it's very similar. They might want to champion that and say, yes, this is something I want to do, but I have the outline of what the charge is through the budget, and this is what I have to speak on. It may not be their personal opinion, but they're appointed, and the work that they do is, under the, governor's kind of guideline.
And I would still recommend reaching out and having the conversation, because even if there's opposition from the governor or from the commissioner, it's still starting a conversation, and maybe that particular bill doesn't pass or that particular, but maybe the issue that you're concerned about can be fixed in another way. And last year I went and I testified in front of like the energy committee, which I know very little about, on behalf of one of my constituents, and the DAS commissioner testified right before me in opposition to the bill. And then I got up and I was like, yay, I love this bill on behalf of my constituent. And I mean, it was what it was. And it wasn't a big bill, or it wasn't like a big, big fight or anything, but I still did it.
Donna says, thank you.
Are there any more questions?
So what is everybody going to do when they get home tonight? cga.ct.gov, find your legislator. Yeah. Yeah.
By far
Who's that?
one of my favorite people. Chris Poulos.
Oh, yeah. He's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
He's one of my
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
Great guy.
And I just want to say one more thing. When you go to the CGA website, they have a schedule of what's happening in the next week. So you can go in. I mean, now it's, that now there's a bunch of maybe task force meeting, but not so much going on now. But when we're in session, it will have all the committee meetings, all the meetings that are going on. It'll tell you when we're in session. And when you click on the committee meeting, it gives you the agenda. And it also will give you, depending on the timing, it'll tell you all the public testimony that's on that bill. Which you can also look up individual bills, the same thing, and it'll give you all the information. It'll tell you the co-sponsors. It will tell you, and I always look at the public testimony to see who supports, who opposes. So there's a ton of stuff that you could get lost. Pour a big glass of wine and get on the CGA website tonight, because it's don't buy it at the supermarket. That's right. That's right. Don't buy it at the supermarket. Go see your wine guy.
Can't get it at the supermarket. Not as long as I'm in office.
I have a
Same.
quick question for someone else. What committee oversees issues dealing with the homeless?
Most of that would be human services, I think. Yeah. Yep. Yep. And you can just, like go and search, do homelessness. And, we've been working on that and doing what we can with that. The mainly thing here is the toughest thing in Connecticut is affordable housing. That's something that's really being worked on many different levels in the state right now.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, before you all rush home, we have a little reception up on the second floor. I hope you can all come up and mingle a little bit. And thank you all for coming. Thank our legislators for giving some time.